first I want to hear about your remembering Camp Winston, Sackett Lake, Monticello, New York. How many summers were you there? Was it just one?
17. I started going to camp. This is a nice story because it has to do with comedy. My father died. See how funny this show could be? My father died when I was 3. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Marty.
And my mother was left with 2 boys, and she had to go to work. And my father grew up with a bunch of nice people, his brothers, and one of their best friends by the name of Cy Geller.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, this is funny how life is. So Cy, my uncle, my father's brother, actually, I think called Cy and said, look, Mac died. His widow has 2 boys. One is 3 and one is 8. She's working now, and school was their babysitter for the year, but now they're going to be alone in the summertime on the streets of the Bronx. Can you do something? So Cy called my mother, who she had known a little bit, and he said, I'll take the boys for the summer.
Really?
Yeah. And my mom didn't have a lot of money, and the camp wasn't cheap. You know, there was some expensive, it was 8 weeks. But he said, pay whatever you can.
Ah.
And at 4 years old, and my brother was there too, I was in a bunk with a lot of the young kids because we were staff kids. Not my mother, but the camp mother had kids or the head counselor. So I was in a bunk 4 years old, you know. Now my mother had to come up every 2 weeks. Remember the guest house that was there by the dining room?
Yeah.
So, you know, so I put her up in the guest house because I would be crying sometimes. I miss my mom. And I went from 4 to 17 when I was a counselor.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, but that's where I became funny. That's where I became funny because, like, you were in a bunk. What were you, 5 or 6 years old?
5.
Okay, so I was in a bunk. I think I may have been a little older, like 7 or something. And you remember this too. You're in a bunk. They play taps. You go to sleep, but you don't go to sleep. You're in the bunk and you're talking. The lights are out and you're talking. Right. Well, I was from the Bronx. Most of the kids came from Long Island.
Right.
The 5 towns. They came from Scarsdale.
Right.
Yonkers, Manhattan, and they all had money. And we're in the dark talking, and one guy says, how many rooms in your house? I have 20 rooms in my house. And the next guy would go, how many rooms in your house? Well, I have 25 rooms in our house. Marty, how many rooms in your house? And I go, well, there's got to be like 1,500 rooms in my house. I lived in an apartment house. And they would laugh, you know, and that they would accept me. And then they would, how many cars in front of your house? Well, we have 4 cars, 2 T-Birds and a station wagon. How many cars in front of your house? Well, we have a Cadillac, we have a Rolls, you know. Marty, how many cars in front of your house? Well, it's interesting. Well, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there were no cars in front of the house, you know, alternate side of the street parking. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, there were 40 cars in front of my house. So, and that's where I learned that, you know, making people laugh was good. And it started there. That's where it really started. It was kind of interesting.
So do you remember me from bunk 5 or bunk 6? You know, I had Jeff Jarrow and Richie Turk, I believe we were all in the same bunk.
Jeff Jarrow, I definitely remember. And Richie who?
Richie Turk, freckles, reddish hair.
Yeah, Richie Turk with freckles. I remember those.
The 3 of us were together for a few years, and I remember, I remember crying like you did. But my sister Bobby was in the girls' campus as a counselor, so she had the same way your older brother helped you. She kept me a little bit in line.
Yeah, yeah. So it was really an interesting time, and that camp. There was a lot of show business people in that camp.
Let me see what you could remember, because the next year I had Warren Murray as a counselor.
Dan Murray's son. That's right. And Warren worked with me at Paramount one season.
Oh, that's right.
Years later. And what's his name? Buddy Hackett's nephew was in the camp. I'm trying to think of his name. But you know who I was a counselor to? London Lee's kid.
Oh, my God. London Lee.
Yeah. I mean, and what's his name? Schaefer. Jack Schaefer was a comedian or something, and his son was a counselor there. And that also, Winston got points for me later on. We'll jump around a little if you don't mind. Remember a sitcom called The Last Resort? It was on CBS for 16 shows.
Right. I think I've seen it. I'm sorry. I don't remember it.
No. But I'll tell you, who cares about the show? What happened was The Last Resort was about a Catskill hotel like the Concord.
Oh.
And the producer of that show was Gary David Goldberg, who did Family Ties, right?
Oh, my God.
So Gary David Goldberg's in his office, and I know that he booked a ticket for him and his wife and for the director of the show, Assad Kalada was his name, to go to the Concord one weekend to do research for the show. So I happen to walk into Gary's office and I say, Gary, I just want to tell you, when you go to the Concord, because the owner's kids of the Concord went to Camp Winston. Well, not only that, the maitre d' of the Concord.
That's who Barbara's is the daughter of the maitre d' of the Concord.
And Arnold, what was the last name? There were two sons that were in my bunk. What was his name? The maitre d'? He just passed away. He lived in Boca.
Yeah, the daughter lives in Boca.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I told him, look up these people. And he goes, you know these people? I said, yeah, I know the talent guy. He picks up the phone and he calls up the office. He goes, I want you to book a ticket for Marty and his wife and the room and everything. We're all going to the Concord. Wow. Cohn, something Cohn was his name, not Myron Cohn.
Right, Barbara Cohn is the daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arnold Cohn? I don't know. I don't remember.
No, Arnold Cohn was the kid. Anyway, we went to the Concord and we had great stories from Cohn, the maitre d', which we did an episode. One of the stories we said, was there any funny things that happened at the Concord? He goes, what are you talking about?
It's all funny.
He says, we were serving dinner one night and a guy died at the table. We go, really? He goes, yeah, we had to put a sheet over him. We couldn't move him till the medical examiner comes. But as soon as he died, the woman next to him said, could I have his dessert? Okay? And we did another story that Cohn gave us about they had a mouse in the kitchen that ate something and died. So the mouse died. Now they're thinking they poisoned everybody in the dining room. It was just so many things happened. And we went to see the show that weekend.
Do you remember who was performing?
Yes, I'm trying to think. I'm so sorry. I'm going blank now.
You're not alone. None of us could remember anything.
No, but the comic that was there, I wrote material for years before that.
Wow.
And but there was a dance team on the bill too that night. but they were older people, and he almost dropped her during the performance.
Ooh.
And afterwards, we met with the talent coordinator. We go, was that supposed to be a comedy dance team? And he says, no, they're really not a dance team anymore. He's an interior decorator, but once in a while, I'll throw him a job.
Ooh.
Okay? I mean, but all those people went through the Concord. Buddy Hackett.
Oh, yeah.
It was but it was all Camp Winston connected. The Parker family owned the Concord, and the Parker kids, Jim Parker and stuff, went to the camp. So we all knew each other. It was hysterical.
What a golden time! What a great. You know, I've wanted to get some of the Catskill comedians on the show, but there's so few left, and the couple of them that where the names pop out, they're not feeling well. They're having health issues. So,
yeah.
Dick Capri is one guy that I'm.
Dick Capri was the guy, and then Dick Lord. Dick Lord was the guy on the show, and I wrote for Dick Capri, and I wrote for Dick Lord, and I wrote for Mousy Lawrence.
Yes.
Remember Mousy?
Yes, of
I wrote
course.
for all those guys back in the day.
Yeah. So
Yep.
It was a golden time. I mean, first of all, it was innocent. None of this crazy stuff that we have here now. People would be able to get in their car and take 2.5 hour drive, and they'd be up at the hotel from Manhattan and spend the weekend or spend 10 days, leave the wife there, go back to work. I mean, it was a great, great time.
Yeah. It wasn't all great driving up, because one weekend I drove up, I was writing for Gabe Kaplan. And it was an icy, snowy night, and we almost crashed.
Oh.
And I felt bad because it would be, the headline would be Gabe Kaplan and another guy died on Route 17. But yeah, it was, but they were good times. They were good times.
Yeah.
And you walked into the dining room at breakfast at the Concord. There were 5,000 cantaloupes on the table. The smell would hit you of all those cantaloupes. It was unbelievable.
So you must have worked in the kitchen at Camp Winston as well as a waiter at times.
I was a waiter. I was a camper waiter.
Now
I had, yeah.
We all us, you know, former young kids would see all those cute girls at camp, and we would wonder if the counselors or the waiters might have had their way with some of them.
Well, if we did, we some of us, it would be very dangerous, because I will tell you that I was going steady at camp with a girl who happened to be Jake LaMotta's daughter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Jake used to come up and do boxing exhibitions for Cy.
Wow.
I used to box on the basketball court. On Monday nights, they had us kids boxing. I boxed a kid by the name of Red Morgan. I met him years later.
Wow.
So what a life, huh?
Yeah.
Do you remember the infirmary?
Of course. I got the measles there. I lived in that damn infirmary.
We all went to the infirmary. Do you remember the doctor?
No.
Dr. Ackerman was his name, because he had a free summer up there. He played tennis. So it was an amazing camp.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Cy and his son Jeff.
Yep.
He was a very interesting guy.
Cy was, yeah.
And his son Jeff was. I remember one time I saw some things that Jeff did that kind of turned me off so much, I decided not to go back the next summer.
Well, I had a problem with Jeff.
Yeah, he
Jeff
bullied some people.
Yeah. Jeff fired me because I told him to go somewhere. And I went back and I started packing. I went to the waiter's bunk. I started packing my trunk. And Cy walks in.
Where are you going?
Cy was like a second father to me. And he said to me, well, where are you going? I said, I'm leaving. I'm going home. You can't go home. I said, what do you mean I can't go home? I don't want you going home. I mean, by that time I was 17. It wasn't that my mother was afraid of me being on the street. He just didn't want me fired. I said, well, your son fired me. Look, I talked to my son, but he's my son, so he's going to give you a punishment instead. I said, well, what's the punishment? I'm not making any of this up, Bruce. He said, you got to set up for the whole camp tomorrow morning, the girls' dining room, the boys' dining room, by yourself. So I said, okay. So I got up there at 5 o'clock in the morning. Remember where the flagpole was and all that?
Yeah.
And I go in the dining room, and who's there? Cy is there, and he's helping me. He's helping me set up. He says, don't tell Jeff. Don't tell it, Jeff. But it was such an interesting life, a time of life then.
Absolutely. And it's so good to hear about all the other people that you remember that, because I didn't come in at the end. I was there 58, 59, 60. But for you, it's kind of towards the end.
Do you remember Richie Rosenstock?
No.
All right. Because he was younger. His brother Harvey Rosenstock is a big editor out in Hollywood.
Wow.
Edits movies. We hooked up in